Amie from Happy Indulgence and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going through my January wrap-up. I actually didn't do one for December and I felt pretty lost without looking through all the books that I read, and if any of you guys had heard either through my blog or on Twitter or social media, it's because I had an author basically threaten me with legal action and attack my thoughts on a book. It was only a 2-star review and I experienced a lot of distress over the holiday period because of that. But now I'm back and everything's blowing over, which I'm super glad about, and always share your honest opinion, guys, and the whole blogging community has your back if that ever happens, and I hope it never does again. So if you're interested, I actually blogged about the whole incident on my blog and I'll link it down below, and I'm super happy to share the rest of my thoughts for January. So basically in January it was a pretty interesting month because I had my co-blogger visit from Sydney and Jenna and I went out to the Lifeline Book Fest in Brisbane, so I vlogged about it as well, and it was actually my first vlog which I filmed and I had a lot of fun doing it, and it was also really great to volunteer for a charity that I believe does a lot of really great work and that I have been supporting for many years, so I was really happy to go in and see the behind the scenes basically. I also filmed a lot of videos with Jenna because every time she visits I'm like, no, we have to do more booktube videos together, so look out for those in the coming weeks. We did a lot of fun challenges and like the unpopular opinions one I have coming out soon, so stay tuned everyone. I also went to the Lynette Noni Grey Veil launch. I had a lot of fun there and it was so great seeing her again and seeing all the enthusiasm and the excitement for the rest of the Midorian Chronicles. So I actually vlogged at the event as well and I got the chance to interview her for my YouTube channel, so I'll link that up above as well, and I hope you guys enjoy that vlog. Other than that, it was also my birthday. I finally turned 30 and I've been in denial about it all. Anyway, it's a bit weird because you would think that by the time you're 30 you would have achieved what you really wanted to, but I guess it's just unrealistic goal setting and expectations. And I saw on Twitter something called like youth culture or something, like expecting to have everything by 25, but obviously that's not gonna happen. So yeah, I had a really great party with friends and family, and yeah, it was a great start to the new decade really. Anyway, so on to the books that I read this month. I read 10 books. I think out of that I DNF'd one. I was in a massive reading slump for most of the month because I read some truly horrible books that really killed all my reading motivation pretty much. So I'm just going to start from the books that I love the most and the books that I disliked as well. So the first book I read is A Monster Cause by Patrick Ness, and this is a beautiful illustrated edition. I mean, check how gorgeous this is. If you guys haven't heard of A Monster Cause, I really don't want to spoil it for you guys, but it's quite a short and quick read. It's about a guy dealing with his mother's illness by dreaming about a monster who comes and visits him, and the monster has 3 legends that he wants to tell, and at the end of these legends Connor actually has to tell a story back, which is his actual truth. Anyway, it sounds pretty confusing, but the less I say about this the better. I was really depressed after I finished reading this book, but the only caveat is that I'm sad I watched the movie before I read the book. So if you do intend on seeing the movie or reading the book, definitely read the book first. And I ended up giving A Monster Cause 5 stars. Oh yes, the next 5-star read I had was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. If you haven't heard the hype for this series yet, I don't know where you've been, but seriously, this is the best fae book I've ever read. And that's a bit cool because I mean there's another popular author's fae books, but to be honest, I don't really like those. So The Cruel Prince, it's about this girl called Jude. She's sent away to the fairyland and they all bully her and they're all pretty terrible about it, and she decides one day that she wants to best them, and she's basically a Slytherin queen. And so she goes through the whole novel learning about the machinations of the Fae Court and finding out like who the major players are in the game, and it's just really fascinating seeing her journey turning from a measly small human who the Fae really hates and bullies into someone that's actually really well respected. And to be honest, as someone who has moved to another country, who felt inferior to everyone else, and who was the subject of bullying, I really related so much to this story, and I felt like it was quite similar to my own life story, even though it's about Fae and a fantasy court and killing people. So anyway, that's a lot to ponder about my life, so I gave this one 5 stars. I also love The Strange Library by Haruki Murukami, and this is actually my first Murakami read, but look how pretty this is. Like, it's got so many beautiful illustrations. It's actually a really short story, but I loved it. It's about this boy who goes into a library and all these strange things happen to him and they hold him against his will, but then there's like glimpses of hope, and you know, there's always like these obstacles and these strange creatures that come out and greet him. And the ending was actually like, it was actually really abrupt, but then it made me rethink the whole thing about what this book is actually about. So it's a short novella, but if you pick this up, I definitely recommend this hard copy because it's just another experience just reading a book like this and having the illustrations tell the picture as well. So I gave this book 4 stars. I also picked up Batman Nightwalker by Marie Lu. You guys know I love Batman, right? But it is basically his origin story. And in this book, there's also this really cunning character called Madeline. And Bruce, being the teenage Bruce, lets his hormones, you know, like pretty much affect him, and he wants to know who Madeline is, and she's a really cunning, mysterious villain character who's stuck in Arkham Asylum, and Bruce Wayne needs to be there to basically assist the police with their investigation and also to do some community service. And I loved this book because as a huge Batman fan, I don't really know much about Bruce Wayne as a teenager, but I felt like this was a really accurate portrayal. And even though there's no Batman per se, I still felt it was a very familiar setting and a familiar story set in Gotham, you know. It was interesting seeing Bruce with friends and his close friendship with Harvey Dent as well, and yeah, I really enjoyed this book and I gave it 3.5 stars. I read Ballad for a Mad Girl by Vikki Wakefield. I've heard so much about this psychological thriller. I found it super creepy. Like, there are some Carrie-like moments where the protagonist is just standing there and there's like blood everywhere, and it actually like made me really scared at night. But I really liked the unreliable narration. You never really knew whether what the character was experiencing was some sort of mental illness, or whether it was like a sort of fantasy sort of read, or whether like she's just completely losing the plot. Throughout the whole book, it constantly kept me guessing. My only thing is that it's never really answered what exactly she's experiencing, and it kind of felt like it had an unsatisfactory ending, but while reading it I was like, I'm so here for this. So I gave this 3.5 stars, and yeah, I definitely recommend picking it up if you love psychological thrillers. Another 3.5 star read for me was Almost Midnight by Rainbow Rowell. This probably doesn't surprise you, but I read it on New Year's Day because I thought it was really fitting. Look at these beautiful illustrations. For those of you who are massive fans of Rainbow Rowell, it's probably worth mentioning that this book already features 2 previously released short stories. So that's Midnights, that was in the My True Love Gave to Me anthology, and also Kindred Spirits, which has previously been released in America. I had already read Midnights before, but it was kind of nice to reread it again. I think this book is pretty expensive for what you get, even though it's beautiful and illustrated and super glittery, but I think it was like $15 Aussie dollars, and you only get 2 previously released short stories. I did enjoy the short stories, especially Kindred Spirits is a bit of a Star Wars short story about a fangirl waiting in line, finding out things about the other geeks in the line, and yes, that's definitely relatable, even though I've never camped out before, so that's probably too far for me. But I gave this one 3.5 stars. One book that I also reread was Illuminae, and I reread it in audiobook format. I think it was the second time I've reread the book. I actually really love Gemini. If you don't know, yet. That's basically all I talk about and all I think about, and I've read Gemini 4 times. But anyway, so I've only read the Illuminae that one time and I re-listened to it on audio format. Guys, the audiobook is so awesome, but I truly recommend reading the book in this format and then going back and re-listening to it on the audiobook, because there's like guns. It sounds like an interview between Ezra and Katie, and then like Aiden's narrator is also like really chilling, and I just love how they bounced off each other with the banter and the sarcasm and really brought it to life. And there's things like, you know, gun shooting, and there's music playing, and it just feels like a theatric experience really, and I really love that about the audiobook of this series. And now I feel truly prepared to go into Obsidian, and I need it like I need air. Like, oh my gosh, it's not long to go now, but I can't wait. I can't wait. Now onto the last 3 books that really disappointed me and I blame for this terrible reading slump. The first one is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Guess what, guys? I don't give a fuck about this book. Basically, I thought it was going to be life-changing, that I was going to come back with a new perspective, that I was just going to learn really not to give a fuck. My main problem about this book was that it's from an entitled male who has traveled all over the world and lived in like 12 countries or something, and he doesn't appreciate it, and he's giving you life advice about why your perspective should change. So I'm like, who are you again, and why are you bragging about your story to me, because I don't really care. And then like he even says things like, oh my gosh, by the time you travel the 4th country and the 5th country, you stop appreciating it because they're all the same after a while. I'm like, really? Like, you're trying to tell people about how rich and entitled you are to be able to do that? Well, most of us need to, you know, earn a living if we really want to be able to achieve that. Yeah, like, that was my main problem with it. I just thought, like, it sounded preachy, and now I know why I hate self-help books pretty much. Anyway, it did contain a few interesting gems, I'm going to give you that, but nothing that you couldn't find anywhere else, so I gave it 2 stars. The next book is a Love Oz YA called The Last Days of Us by Beck. I'm actually reading this for Oz YA in February, which is what I review on ABC Radio once a month. But oh my gosh, this was another book that I could not get into. I basically got to about 3 chapters and the girl had called herself a slut about 5 times already. And I'm like, I get it. You know, you have this like twisted perception in your head that everyone thinks you're a slut. But then she goes on throughout the whole book and she repeats it 8 times. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, look at all these doggy-eared pages. That's all the times where she calls herself a slut. And I didn't see it from any other characters, and I thought it was just really unhealthy to have that kind of perspective. Basically, the premise is she goes on a road trip with her best friend who is now dating her ex-boyfriend, and the whole thing is just because she wants to win him back. And like, oh my gosh, so much drama, so much like angst. The characters were terrible. I didn't know why they were friends. The boyfriend was terrible. Like, oh, there's also this scene where she's dealing with grief for her brother who has died, and then she talks about the way how her brother used to stick up for her and the way he used to fart in her face. Like, really? Like, if your brother dies, that's what you miss about him? Yeah, no thanks. Yeah. Anyway, so did not like this book, so I gave this book 2 stars. Last but probably least is Zenith by Sasha Olsberg and Lindsay Cummings. I just actually filmed a rant video about this book because it was pretty much one of the worst books I've ever read. Like, I love my space opera books, but this one was absolutely terrible because the 2 writers' points of views just did not mesh together, and like, it needed some serious editing, and I'm surprised that it didn't get enough editing. You've got 6 multiple point of views, you've got a glass spaceship, and then you've got these characters that feel like carbon copies of popular other characters. If you are looking for my full review, I will have it up soon, which I'll link down below. And yes, so I actually DNF'd that one, which pretty much equals a 1 star for me. These are just some of the wonderful books that I got to read in January. If you enjoyed my thoughts on these books, or you want to check out more of my reviews, please check out my blog link down below where I leave in-depth reviews of everything. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you have any comments at all, please leave it down below. And yeah, subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks guys, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.